like achieve states of transcendence, even if it's in bite-sized chunks, kind of like you were describing with your process of reading this book and cultivating your peace. Like that is an indication of a drip down soul. Like there is a part of you that's outside of here. So your buy-in to the illusion of this place is less intense than it is for a looper. But it's not because you are better, you're anchored in more of a frequency of absolute truth, and the loopers got stuck here. So they're anchored in more of like the illusion, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. Maybe the piece of it that I'm having trouble with is, I guess, whenever we're making classifications, it invites in separation. So whenever that's probably the issue that I'm having with it, which is, let me take one more step back. It's interesting because I remember reading Dolores Cannon, and when she talks about incarnations, her site, like she would put people in deep trances, for those who don't know, and then she would walk people into a past life, have them die, and then go into the afterlife, and then she would use her hypnosis sessions to basically map out the astral plane. Her definition of it, which I kind of always just ran with, was that you have certain missions or things you want to get done in this life, and then you go into this like almost simulator with a bunch of screens around you, kind of like at the end of the Matrix, whenever like all those screens are circling, and you can see which lives align with the missions that you're trying to carry out. You then pick a life, and then that's when you incarnate. However, I just got to a point where I found Paramahansa, who was talking about incarnations, and his was more describing. So first of all, I would say that that's probably more close to your drip downs. And then Paramahansa was talking about how what he would call probably more closer to your loopers. But see, they're both saying it as in terms of this is everybody. So Paramahansa was more like, the carnation wheel. So when we incarnate, we still have the same energy in which we left our last incarnation, and we just bring that into the next one. And we kind of just essentially have that looping mechanism until we find the salvation. We no longer have egoic desires, and then we move on to the astral plane, where essentially the same process plays out. So where it gets interesting now is that you're bringing in this new conundrum of both of them being true, in my opinion, my interpretation of what's being said. But so then that makes it difficult for me to understand, because I would kind of just take the assumption that maybe that's not fair. Maybe okay, what I was going to say is I would take the assumption that we're all able to experience both. But at that same, or we would experience the same thing. But at that same time, my mind is saying, well, we're deviated so far away from source that we can still experience that separation or those differences in the incarnation process. So that felt like a whole bunch of word vomit right there. But I guess my difficult nature, right? I can feel my ego. It's like, yeah, I'm a drip down. But then there's the, like, maybe a more calm place where I'm like, it feels off to think that there would be like these two different ways of incarnating. It's like whenever people talk about NPCs, it's like hard for me to jump on board with it, because I'm like, well, they have the power to do it, but is it just a frequency thing? Is it people that are just at a different frequency in their journey? Like, where I feel like there's something I'm missing here. Are you able to help me with that?
Yeah, for sure. And like, also, I feel the same way. I've never met an NPC. Like, I totally understand what people are talking about when they are referring to the concept. I've never met one. Everybody I have met has a soul. Is that because that's my own projection? Very possibly. But I've never met somebody that I'm like, you're just empty. Like, you're just a background character.
Yeah.
And I feel like, who the fuck am I to say that about everybody anyway? So I agree with you. I guess another way to think about it, so that we don't bring in that separation and that sense of like, some of us are like, we're the heroes, we're the rescuers, and we're coming to rescue the downtrodden, pathetic ones that can't get out of here, would be like, if you, Clayton, who I'm speaking to right now, if you are a drip down and you've come in here from outside and you're living out maybe like 5 or 6 or 7 different incarnations all at the same time through different time periods, it could be that the one that you're coming to rescue is the looper aspects of yourself that got stuck here. So you're like on a soul retrieval mission to, like, you are almost like you are the Christ bridge that is coming to shepherd the lost pieces of yourself back home.
That makes sense, but that's a lot. Because it makes sense because, the way that I've been starting to view the world, especially in regards to what I've been being taught by Paramahansa, which is, we're all these divine sparks. We're all these fractals of God. And we then get encased in a causal body, which gets encased in an astral body, and then gets encased in a physical body, which is what we're experiencing right now. So if you go back up that entire chain of command, we're all from the same original source.
Mm-hmm. Which includes the dark players, right? Like, this was a huge, I went through such an intense dark night of the soul in November and December of last year. It, like, holy moly, I felt like I got crushed by it. It was so intense. And it was just like I got cookie crumb fed by my higher self, I would say. A bunch of things that walked me deeper into like the really dark underbelly of this realm that we're in. Things I already knew about, like cults, the occult, child sacrifice, pedophilia, like really dark stuff that I knew about, but it's almost like I was guided to look at it more closely and find a way to be at peace and at the same time acknowledge like what I would term it as an abomination, and anybody that desecrates like the purity of a child or a baby, but also even anybody, because we all carry that child or baby within us. It seems like an abomination to me. So it was like I was having to hold intense duality within myself. And the thing, and I was also really deeply examining like Christ and trying to understand Christ on a deeper level. So it made sense that I got led down that, because Christ is like the light, and there then is a darkness, right? That those things want to be reconciled together. So a vision that I kind of received to help me understand it was, I was like being guided down into, I don't know, like maybe like a cave or an underground lair, and it had like a staircase, a spiral staircase that was carved out of stone all the way down the edge of, like, is a cylindrical drop into an underground layer. And anyway, and it felt like I was being taken on an astral journey by Christ, and I was walking behind Christ down these stairs. And as I could get, like, we got deeper down the stairs, the energy of the pain and the suffering was so overwhelming. And yet Christ never wavered in his peace. All he emanated was like peace and mercy and acceptance and love. And when we got to the bottom, it was like I was being shown what, I don't know, another understanding of what redemption means. And there were people there representing the darkest darkness that were hurting, basically were hurting other humans and hurting children. And what he said was, anybody and everybody who is ready to leave this nightmare behind is now welcome. And that was it. It was all players. It was the victims and the victimizers, and they were of equal value. And some of them came, and we just walked back up the stairs, and he just brought those who were ready out of the nightmare back into, I assume that the end place because I just went to the surface, and then, there was like almost like a transmutation. It is back into the, like almost like the illusion being dissolved back into the wholeness, the oneness of everything. And that was really powerful to me to see that, because it helped me to understand something I was grappling with, which is that sense of separation. And like, I felt very hung up on, like, I know there are people here doing nefarious things, and that there are probably other beings that aren't necessarily human that are also doing nefarious things. And yet, where do they fit in all of creation? Like, if this is all God, like, where do they fit? How does this fit? What am I supposed to do with this? And that was the answer to that question, which is like, we are all God. All of every single piece is equally precious and valued and loved. And there is, at the end of the day, what it honestly felt like, and people might take issue with this, but what it felt like to be in that experience was that there was no need to mete out some horrible form of justice or vengeance for the suffering that occurred, but that the process of choosing to return to the light would involve its own, I don't know, like every, like, say, if we think about every soul that has done something terrible to somebody else, it's kind of like what we hear when people report like life reviews, almost like you have to pass through this veil of the accumulation of everything that you have participated in and feel it in order to return. And honestly, I think that's the heart. I think the heart is the key to everything. And the heart is that passageway back into the light, and it's like the portal out of the nightmare whenever we're ready to take it.
Yeah, that's interesting, because even from, let's say, a chakra perspective, the lower frequencies are like safety, fear, groundedness attached to this earthly possession. But then once you move through the heart, it becomes about truth, seeing the astral, being connected to the divinity. So there's definitely a parallel in terms of, I'm trying to say chakras now. I feel like that's the appropriate way to say it. So I'm trying to say chakras. Yeah. It sounds cool too. But I find that interesting. But from your experience or vision, however you want to deem it, what did you say Christ said that whoever wants to come can now join me? Is that what it was? Mm-hmm. So how does this play into the idea of karma then? Is it that even, I guess, and maybe this is not the message, right? The message you got from it was that everybody is able to find salvation. Everyone can be redeemed. But it struck me as though they didn't need to play out their own karma. Is that a separate lesson that wasn't brought to you, or is that somehow woven into this?
I think that's what I mean when I don't think I articulate it well, because it all blends together. I don't want to talk forever, but when I talk about moving through the portal of the heart and passing through that veil of the accumulated, it's like the emotional felt bank of everything we have participated in. So like, I don't know about, I think maybe I first read about this in Journey of Souls and Destiny of Souls, but I can't remember because it's been a long time since I've read those. But some people share about like a life review experience at the end of their lives, where as they are seeing everything, it's like when they are released from the physical body, they suddenly get almost like 360-degree vision, where they relive their whole life, but from the perspective of everyone involved. And some people have described it as being like excruciating. And like, there are moments when, like when you just said something mean to somebody as a kid on a playground, and it seemed like fairly inconsequential, like something you're not proud of, but also not like the biggest deal in the world. But you feel how that landed with the other person and the ripple effect that it created. It feels like that, like as we were passing up through it, it was like, to return to salvation means that you completely feel everything that you participated in, but that liberates you from the process of the karmic wheel, because that's the whole point of the karmic wheel anyway, it's like you're doing it in slow motion, versus just passing through this one like prolonged but temporary moment of like blinding intensity of everything you participated in while you were immersed in the illusion.
Man, the thoughts that are kind of coming to me is like thinking about that place of being, if you're like a truly malevolent person who has carried out destruction on the world. Like, again, bringing back my man Paramahansa, he talks about how like right when you die, you can experience like you experience either a nightmare or you can experience like a very blissful dream, which is kind of that recollection process. And yeah, I mean, I could only, it's very, and maybe there's a piece of us that, past the anger, if you will, that's like, just feels so bad for these souls that have carried out such malevolent forces on the world, and to think that they'd be trapped in a nightmare that's, they energetically have to feel all of the things that they did. Like I can't, it's kind of hard for me to even just mentally comprehend like some of the, let's say the top aggressors in those realms, like what they would possibly have to experience once getting to that place of, call it judgment, getting to that final place. Like that would be, that's heavy just to think about. That's heavy for me just to think about. And then for someone to actually have to go through it is like a whole nother story.
I mean, I think that's why we see it going the way that it's going in like our world, in our dimensional bandwidth that we occupy as humans. Because I think that those players who have played those very dark roles, a lot of them are like, fuck that. I do not ever want to feel that. And I think that's what the darkness is too, is like the extreme ego that is choosing separation and like choosing, it's like, no, I will live forever and I will become like God and you have no, like, that kind of egomaniacal insanity. And so some of them are like clinging to it. But I perceive that there are a lot of people who are wrapped up in the darkness, who are suffering horribly and really, really, I don't want to say like, I don't want to make it sound like, oh, poor them or anything like that. But just, I just acknowledge that it takes a humongous toll. It is the complete opposite of what we actually are, to play those roles and play them for a prolonged period of time. And when I tune into those things, I feel a lot of suffering and a lot of remorse, kind of like when we hear about people who, get recruited into gangs and then they just want to leave the gang so badly, but they feel like, how can I, like the price is too high, I'm in too deep, like that.
Yeah, I think it's no, it's certainly difficult, because I'm sure there are people who may or may not listen to this, but there's certainly an energy of, wanting those people, being like, oh no, it's so great that they get to suffer for all the things that they did. But it seems that it comes back to that place of calm and compassion and peace, and maybe that's even how Jesus was able to attain Christ consciousness, is being able to be in that place. He was strung up, he was tortured for all intents and purposes for doing nothing wrong other than speaking truth, and then had to carry a cross forever, and then was humiliated, and then eventually died, and one of his last words were, forgive them for what they not know what they do. And it's like, man, like that level of compassion. I mean, it makes sense that so many people look up to him and see him as like the figure, because it's like, I mean, I can't say I'd have that level of compassion if I was put through the ring like that. But maybe that's, it comes back, I think and maybe this is a beautiful thing, right? Is it comes back to what your vision was experiencing with him going down into that dark place, and how you're feeling all this terribleness, and yet all of this terrible energy that you're feeling around you, and he's still sitting there in this place of calmness, in this place of peace, in this place of bliss, just not allowing the external environment to harm his internal environment.
Yeah, like coming back to that sort of eye of the hurricane analogy, like he was so deeply connected to the absolute truth of the highest love, that is the highest light, that is God, that even going down into the darkest places where the most awful forms of the illusion play out, he knew it was an illusion and that it's optional, and that all of the participants could leave whenever they're ready, and that there is a way out, and it's to pass back through the heart and back up to God. That's what it felt like. And I think too, like, I mean, this is a hard one to articulate, but the dark players are us, just like the loopers are us. And so if we identify with being a drip down, it's not because we're better. It's because there's a part of us that likewise exists outside of all of this illusion, that is like ready to come and invite those lost pieces back. And so the dark players, like I think it's a really important thing for anybody who identifies as a light worker or an indigo or a starseed or a wayshower or whatever, labels we put on it to describe the feeling of, like Dolores Cannon says, being here on a mission to bring higher consciousness. It's very important that we don't get caught in the ego trap of believing that our shit don't stink, and believing that we are, that makes us better and we're somehow above the darkness. I think that we are the cleanup crew, and we're here because this mess is ours. But I also don't say that from a place of like, back in the conversation earlier, you were talking about how there is a prevailing belief that whether it's a majority of belief or not, I agree. There's a lot of people who perceive that human beings are a plague on the earth and we should be eradicated. And I think that that's an extreme, sort of, it's like a warping of that acceptance that we are, like, this is our mess. This is our mess to clean up. But that doesn't mean that we deserve to all be wiped out and die. There's so much beauty to us as well. And we're the ones that get to choose. Are we going to highlight the beauty, or are we going to highlight the darkness and the mess? And we also get to clean up the mess. As like, I think that's also why so many of us are being called to do that really deep introspective work and shadow work and clearing out our trauma, working with our nervous system, using things like breath work, the Akashic records to more deeply understand ourselves, meditation practices, yoga, like you name it, right? Those are all just modalities or practices that we can use because we feel truly, genuinely guided inside of ourselves to clean up the mess. And we all have shadow. We all have things that we deeply regret. And it's like, I remember also this point where I realized, well, I am of the belief, I mean, I don't want to go too deeply into politics either, but I'll just name drop here. I had a really intense dream that really hammered it home for me once, which again, I don't feel like was a dream. I feel like it was a remote viewing astral experience. But I believe that Hillary Clinton is one of the, is a very, very dark actor, very involved with very, very dark things. And I had this realization around the same time last year that I had the experience with Christ, where I was like, I cannot honestly say that if I were to walk through her life in her shoes, that I would be any different. Do you know what I mean? Like, and this isn't giving her a hall pass to, or anybody, like, we don't have to make it about her, but it's not giving people a hall pass to just do whatever they want without considering the suffering it creates for others. But it's more realizing, like, again, it's not like my shit doesn't stink. It's not like I'm just such an evolved person that I am completely above any kind of dark action. it's something that I'm working on cultivating all the time and actively choosing all the time. But I have regrets in my past, just like anybody else. I have said those throwaway comments to people, or I've done things that, I deeply regret and wish isn't what I did. I wish it wasn't my choice. It was a reflection of the level of consciousness I was at. But it can go so much darker. If I was literally like guided and groomed toward a path of darkness, I very well could be acting out that path of darkness and could be one of the people that others are referring to. So to me, it feels like that helps me at least to dissolve that sense of separation as well, to be like, it's all just us. Like if we are characters within the dream of a great dreaming mind, like when you have a bad dream and there's a villain that's doing something like hurting somebody you love, and you wake up, you realize the villain was a piece of your own consciousness.
Yeah. It's a difficult thing to wrestle with.
It is. It is.
Even at my stage in my evolutionary process, it's a difficult piece of the puzzle because it really, I think what makes it difficult is this feeling that comes with it to have to or want to do something about it, which is difficult because if it goes back to earlier in the conversation, there's only so much we can do, which is protecting our inner peace. So do you feel like that there's a level of, they say ignorance is bliss, but I also think that there's a level of being, wisdom is bliss. Huh. Because it feels to me like if you get to a place where you know enough, you can be at a place of bliss as well. I don't know if there's a question here, but an interesting realization maybe that I just came to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but maybe you have to struggle through that ignorance. It's almost like ignorance isn't really bliss. Ignorance brings about pain, but you're just ignorant to why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. When I think about the people like in my personal life who I would say are still in a state of blissful unawareness, at this point, they are definitely actively choosing that unawareness. Like they are more aware right now that they're deliberately being like this and have their fingers in their ears. And again, it's like a fragile piece, right? Like it's a piece that is fragile. It can be broken by the things that we're observing outside and experiencing in life. And I agree with you that like to be ignorant doesn't mean you're happy necessarily. There's some kind of bliss because you are unaware of how much power you have in your own situation. But then there is a lot of pain. Like I think we all live with a lot of pain and trauma, even if we came from the best childhood. We've all had painful experiences, and that pain, if you're ignorant, you don't know where that pain is or how to find it or how to fix it. And that's a pretty, I think most people live that way. And I mean, I would never go back to it. I don't want to live that way anymore.
I figured it out to this point. We're good. We're going to move past that, right? But this is actually bringing up something I brought up earlier, an article that I found. I have found it. I don't know if this is the one that I saw, so I haven't read it through, but it's like nurse reveals the top 5 regrets people make on their deathbed. So maybe this is actually a way that we can bring us back to something actionable that we're able to look at. So number 1, I wish I had, I wish I'd had. Yeah, we're going back to that bad grammar. When we write, maybe we can't do the bad grammar, but number 1, I wish I had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. This was the most common regret of all. When people realize that their life is almost over and look back clearly on it, it is easy to see how many dreams have gone unfulfilled. Most people had not honored even half of their dreams and had to die knowing that it was due to choices they had made or not made. That's crazy. Especially whenever we break that down from like our perspective here of like saying that this is a dream world, and then we have like dreams within the dream that we want to act out, and it leaves us with this place of unfulfilling our dreams within the dream. Wow, now I feel like I'm taking this to a place of inception, but But is there like, do you feel like there's a corollary here with like unfulfilled dreams and reincarnation of like, if we don't complete things, we need to come back and do them again?
Definitely. I definitely perceive that there is like that's a big motivator, and that can be one of those themes I was talking about, those energetic themes that like if you die and it was in your heart to like be something, fulfill something, then you can get pulled back into an incarnation where you have another opportunity to express that. Yeah. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because most of the reason that we don't pursue those is because or a lot of the reason I think that motivates a lot of people is we're afraid of other people's judgment. And then when you think about it and you look at it and you're like, wait, that person was totally like traumatized and asleep themselves. Like, why did I hold myself back because of the opinions of somebody who is also unhappy?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a huge thing too, is just realizing like, do you really, I don't know, maybe this is just like an energetic thing, but like paying attention to whose value or like whose judgment you're placing weight on. And I know it's a lot easier said than done, but after my TikTok and Instagram have blown up, I've seen plenty of comments, but being able to filter out which ones are coming from a place of genuine curiosity and which ones are coming from a place of like, hey, my life's actually not going that well, so I'm going to lash out on this comment stage of this post. Coming to that realization has definitely helped me a lot in truly embodying what I'm trying to go for in life. And people who either align with that message or don't, which is totally cool. But at the end of the day, it's like you're going to help more people by aligning with that thing as opposed to cowering away from it.
100%. 100%. It's interesting. Do you receive a lot of like trolly angry comments?
I haven't posted a lot recently, but yeah, I mean, so my TikTok specifically, because have you gone to the book, by the way? That's what I was going to bring up. Yeah.
Yes, I
What are your
have.
thoughts?
Yes. Oh,
Yeah?
I love it.
Fuck
I
yeah.
love it. Yeah.
Awesome. We don't have to make this a whole a promo for the book right now, but on the TikTok is what got me started on actually writing that book. It was because you read it, but for those who might not know, I found the Gospel of Thomas and then started, dissecting it on TikTok. And that was the first exposure I had to like a massive video going viral. And I mean, the comments, being told that you're a heretic or you're a demon worshiper or, Christ is the only thing, the Bible's the only thing that you need to know can be very painful. It's a very painful experience.
Mm-hmm.
But the beauty of it is that it's really shown me a lot of the cracks within the church, within Catholicism, within Orthodox Christianity of the incongruencies that have been perpetuated by the church, not taught by Jesus, might I say. I want to add that very clearly. Not that Jesus taught them, but the way that things have been interpreted or misconstrued accidentally or purposely. I'm not going to say either way, but maybe some of it was purpose, maybe some of it was accident. But it's very fascinating to see, people that are just regurgitating of things, or like when you start seeing the same comment over and over again, you're like, okay, you start realizing where there's like a theme, right? Like, are you really thinking for yourself if this is the same comment that I've seen 5 times again? And so it really invites me to be like, okay, like it's weird because it's super empowering at the same time to be like, okay, the fact that this comment keeps coming up tells me that people aren't actually thinking about this issue. It's just something that they've been taught to believe and have been conditioned to believe, and they're just going to keep regurgitating it and repeating it. So there's like something here to specifically go to and act on or talk about. And, especially whenever I hear the comment, the one that's coming to mind right now as an example is the Bible's the only book you need. Any other books are heretical and it's not the word of Jesus. Meanwhile, it's like, dude, this is not in accordance with what he teaches, right? Don't judge others. Don't, cast judgment. Like that was a big one. Actually, I got that one recently. That's a big one, especially touching on judgment, which is like, I looked at the YouTube page, your YouTube page, and you're going down a very dark path of new age spiritualism, which will not help you and you will need to be saved from it. To which I replied, like, and again, this is a very powerful point. Make sure you're in a place of calmness when you reply to these things, because I can very much feel like my anger wanting to tell him off. I know he's wrong, but coming back to a place of calmness and just being like, look, I'm happy to have a conversation with you about Jesus, but I'm not going to be doing it whenever you're sitting here with just a word vomit of something that doesn't make sense at all and casting judgment on my viewpoint. Probably nothing about me if that's your comments that you're making. So if you're going to bring this up in the future, like, actually have something you're talking about. Don't just label everything I'm doing as being dark and, new age spiritualist. And so I bring all of this up because, the mass programming. Is that why I brought this up? Was the mass programming? I feel like there was something else.
I think so. Well, but I mean, I asked you if you get a lot of those kind of comments, and I think that's what you were talking about. And you were talking about, like, hearing the same kind of themes regurgitated over and over and over, which indicates to me, it indicates that there's a massive crown chakra trauma.
Oh, and this ties back into human design too, which is amazing. Oh, crown chakra. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on that, but it's tying back into my human design, where, like, my mission here is like a heretical investigator. So my job is to, like, pay attention to, like, the big picture items, like don't hold people responsible. Like, I can see, and I know there are people who go after individuals, but mine is more to look at, like, the overall structure of things, and then, like, pick them out and be like, okay, like, this is a common thing that people keep saying. Let's dive into it and talk about why this is misconstrued and where we're off the mark on it.
Are you a 5-1?
I don't know that deep. Maybe. Is that heretical investigator?
Okay. I think so. I mean, I'm not a deep human design person either. I was just wondering if that was what it was. The crown chakra trauma, I'll just talk about that while you look it up, is, to me, it is that basically the extremely deep and trauma-based programming that we have received through many generations, through, like, innumerable cultures, to sever our direct connection with God. I know we talked about this on my podcast too, to the point where you believe that your own interpretation of the word of Christ or any other source of, like, divine wisdom from other cultures or whatever is not good enough or is dangerous, and so you have to believe in externalized authority of either, like the papacy or the church of any kind, the particular preacher in your church, the Bible, whatever. But it's like, and I'm sure it applies to other religions as well. I just can't speak to them because I don't have personal embodied experience with those other religions. But it's, to me, like, I have a past life memory of being alive during the Spanish Inquisition, and it was so dark, and the amount of trauma that was inflicted on people from the church, I can just see the way it ripples out through all of these other experiences and cultures and stuff. And the whole point of it was to sever the connection at the crown chakra, where you are not allowed to trust your own crown. You are not allowed to trust your own connection to the divine. You can't talk directly to God. You have to go through us.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a big thing with the church. And that's a big thing that I always point out in my Instagram videos, which is, like, them putting themselves between you and God. It's like, no, and this is something that Gnostics talk about a lot, which is that divine spark that lives within every single one of us. Therefore, you have a communication line to God. You just got to know how to pick up the phone, and to pick up the phone, we come to calmness. So it's super cool. And then I just looked up, to kind of backtrack us to human design. It is a 5-1, and I think it's also hilarious that heretic is in the title of this. So the 5-1 profile in human design is a blend of the 5th line heretic and the 1st line investigator. These individuals, aka me, are characterized by their need to make sense of the world and their ability to influence others through their practical insights and solutions. Understanding the dynamics of this profile can provide valuable insights into how 5-1 profiles navigate their life experiences and relationships. The 5th line, or heretic, is the most transpersonal line in the hexagram. It's about being universal, being for everyone. Those with this line in their profile often feel a calling to be of practical use to others, solving problems and addressing needs. They are naturally seen by others as problem solvers and may often find themselves in situations where they are called to provide practical solutions, which is hilarious because I was a computer engineer for, the first 10, 20 years of my life. The first line in this profile, the investigator, adds a foundation of depth and curiosity. It drives the 5-1 profile to understand how things work and how to delve deep into their interests. This line is about getting to the foundations of things, searching for security through knowledge. Whoa, that's funny that it's all about wisdom, that book. In the context of the 5-1 profile, it is this deep understanding that underpins their problem-solving ability. The interaction between the 5th and 1st lines in the 5-1 profile creates an interesting dynamic. The drive to investigate from the 1st line feeds the practical solving problem, the practical problem-solving ability in the 5th line, and in turn, the recognition and demand from others in the 5th line can steer the focus of the investigation in the 1st line. This cycle can make the 5-1 profile highly effective in roles where deep understanding and practical solutions are needed. However, this profile also comes with its challenges. Because 5th line individuals are often projected upon by others, they may sometimes struggle with unrealistic expectations or misunderstandings. Balancing their need for solitude in the 1st line with the demand of others' 5th line can also be a challenge for 5-1 profiles.
Yeah, totally. I was going to say 5s get projected on a lot because I'm a 2-5. So that's the hermit and the heretic. And that is, we were talking about my Akashic readings right at the very beginning. And I was explaining that I don't desire to do single session readings as my main thing anymore. And that's part of it because with that 5th line, it's just, we just naturally attract projection. That used to happen to me in my dating life all the time. Like guys would project onto me the kind of girl they thought I was. I mean, we all do that to each other. I was definitely doing that to other people, but it was a pattern. And then they would want me to be that. And if I couldn't be that, I felt like I was failing. But in terms of the Akashic records, it's like, I just, I can see a lot in the Akashic records, but I still only have a human mind. So I can't see the whole picture all at once. And I don't have every answer for every person. And I just don't think that's how it works. We're all supposed to uncover our own answers. And coming back to that crown chakra thing, we each have our own connection to God. So I find that what I'm best at in the Akashic records is almost like bringing forward little pieces that activate your own your own process of being oh my God, and all the pieces falling into place. And some of it comes through me and my words and what I can see, but I think it's an internal alchemy that I trigger in other people. But it's hard with single sessions. I just found it was very hard energetically for me to brace myself to have people come with an expectation that, I don't know, I don't want to say that they thought I was going to solve other problems. I don't think that's actually what people were expecting, but just a lot of something built up, a lot of anticipation. And yeah, it's intense to have a 5 in the profile, to feel like you want, exactly, you want more than anything to help people and solve problems and make things better and make yourself available and be of service. And then that feeling of but if I let myself be guided too much by that, or if I go in that direction too much, then I become I'm trying to meet the expectations that people bring that are unreasonable. So it's kind of, then you have to go back to your other setting where you're kind of like you were saying with the jujitsu as well. I just want to help without tying it up to the perception that I can fix things or I can solve the problem. It's an interesting profile number to balance.
Oh, I get it. Speaking, I get it. But yeah, I think that's also probably what comes into, and that's probably why patience has been a huge thing for me, at least recently, but just in general, I can feel it. And maybe it's a little bit more difficult for me because, you mix in this, what were the combinations? It's like problem solving. Let me see here. We have the problem solving ability. I want to investigate. I want to have the problem solving ability. And then I'm also trying to balance my demand for others, but then also myself at the same time. So like you combine all of that. I mean, in my mind, I'm like, okay, I'm going to deep investigate this. I figure it out. I can solve the problem, right? Like that's kind of, now I'm thinking about it, there's probably an element of that in that book that I wrote, which is to solve this problem of like why we're unable to connect, like truly embody our own Christ consciousness within the church and like how they've deviated from it. And so now that I see the problem, now that I've in asterisk in air quotes solved the problem in a way, it's like now I just need to be patient and let it unfold naturally, as opposed to being like, guys, like here's the answer, like don't call me a heretic anymore, here's the answer. But I think that's where that patience element comes in. Is like, okay, you did your work, take a step back, be patient, and let it unfold as it will.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, like, people, there's a lot to be said for seeds being planted, right? Like even the people in the comment sections, they could really be strongly clinging to and voicing a fear-based perception that they have because there's fear behind it. But your composure and coming back to them and your willingness to keep sharing the information that resonates as true for you and just offering it as a perspective and being like, I'm not saying that I have the accurate interpretation of Christ. I'm just contributing to the discourse. That might plant a seed for them where when they're ready, it opens up a whole avenue that leads them to a greater, I don't know. I don't even want to like project onto them that they are in a bad place, but just advances them on their own journey in whatever direction they
and especially
are wanting.
And I think probably another element of this, which is huge, is that calmness piece. Because I'm sure there's a lot of people, probably majority of people who have been in my situation, past, present, future, would react to a lot of those comments either by disengagement and non-attachment's good either way, but disengagement, or if they do engage, it's going to be from a place of anger or the sympathetic nervous system, which again, as we've talked about, is not a good place to do it. So if I'm able to get myself to a place of calmness and still engage in those conversations, I think that would be super, super beneficial for all of them, and then myself included. Because, it's showing me non-attachment to my ideas. They could be updated, they could become better. And then also it's showing them that there's a calm approach to having the conversation without it needing to go to a place of name calling or judgment. And even more so, now I'm thinking about this, could be providing me with some pretty solid YouTube titles that I can make videos on of just take those words, put it into a YouTube title, and then just talk about the opposite.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's like perfect kind of like clickbait titles that pull people in, and then you're like, bam, here's a balanced perspective.
Here's an example of dark age new spirituality, and then halfway through it I'm like, okay, well, this is why it actually works and why it agrees with all the other religions. Oh wow, that's good. I'm gonna have to remember that. All right, I'll remember it. Yeah, that's cool. Appreciate that. Thanks for helping me out with that, Amy. Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah, but it's also cool because I think, and this is where the investigator piece comes in, is that I'm getting to a place now where I'm able to see all these interconnected things that are happening behind the scenes that people usually aren't, in my opinion, looking for. The connection between Jesus, the connection to Paramahansa, the connection with how Dolores Cannon talks about the astral world and reincarnation, how you talk about it in regards to like these drips or loopers, how Buddhism talks about it with the incarnation wheel. And so it seems to me that, and this is where I come back to wisdom is bliss, is that there's many different ways to describe like the esoteric natures or questions that we have about reality. And if you can embody that wisdom, you now can operate in the world with bliss and calmness, that no matter how people are going to poke at or question the way you view the world, there's a way that you can articulate it to them that makes sense to them. I think that's just beyond powerful, no matter what line of, whether it's in spirituality or computer engineering, or we're talking about plants. I think that's a very powerful communication ability that everyone and anyone should be able to tap into.
Because it bridges that distance of separation.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
It makes me think of our inherent telepathic abilities, which we've, kind of gotten wobbly on, and we're not super confident in it yet. But and I think we talked about this, because you offered the analogy of English like chopping carrots, and so I think we went into it a little bit. But like our natural setting for communication is through a telepathy that comes through our third eye, so transmitting like imagery to each other, and telepathy through the heart, so just like feeling each other, and then telepathy through the sacral, which is like being in deep sort of like relationship and presence with each other. And we the way that we have been sort of trained out of that and trained into using language creates an increased sense of separation, because then we're like alone with our ideas, and our ability to communicate our ideas determines how understood and seen and validated we feel. And so for somebody who isn't very good with words, or, especially like I think about people who have stutters or things like that, and they feel very isolated because their throat chakra is, all the pressure is put on the throat chakra to make themselves understood. And it's like it really amplifies the experience of separation between us to have to rely on English language, or any language for that matter, although I think it's probably different for indigenous languages. Those are probably, they feel to me when I hear them, even if I don't understand what they mean, they feel different in the way that they flow out and the somatic sensations it conjures up within me. But because we are here at this place where we are utilizing language to communicate, I think it is really beautiful when we can find a way to be dexterous enough with words to bridge those gaps of separation and find a meeting place with the other person that we're in conversation with, even if it seems like we have opposing perspectives. Like, to be able to find a way to bridge that is a big triumph.
Yeah.
Feels like a victory.
That's huge. Well, I mean, especially because if it's an energetically charged conversation, your nervous system's going to be activated. So you need to take that time to like just calm it down. And then I'm sure that's what would unlock that little piece that would be able to open you up to see that bigger picture of what's actually unfolding.
Totally. That's it. That's my takeaway from our conversation, is like calmness is the key.
Is that gonna be the title of this podcast episode? Calmness is the key. But no, it does feel like a great spot to wrap it up. I mean, Amy, I'm beyond grateful for connecting with you in this podcast and our previous podcast on your episode. Let the audience know how they can get in touch with you. I'll have your links down below, but let them know how they can get more Amy in their life. And yeah, if you have any final messages for them, let them know.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And just for sharing this conversation. It was like a beautiful way to spend the afternoon. It was awesome.
Hell yeah.
So you can find me at amybelair.com. I am cosmic.oracle on Instagram, and just know that there are some imposters. I will never send you a DM trying to like give you a shady reading. So just ignore all of those. And you can also find me on my podcast, which is Third Eye Awakening. Clayton was featured. We had an awesome conversation there too. And it's all about spiritual and psychic awakening, and just like everything under that like broad umbrella of cool topics. So yeah, those are the places that people can find me. I run a whole plethora of courses teaching people how to read the Akashic Records for themselves, teaching them how to do it as a skill and a service for others and start a business around it. how to activate your psychic abilities and find magic in the darkness and like, your own dark night of the soul experiences. So just check it out.
Hell yeah. Amy, thanks again. Appreciate it. Guys, go check out our podcast. We had an incredible conversation on it. So that's honestly a good spot to start off. And if you don't see it, I guess it's also cool, but we'll definitely have a talk about it whenever we see each other in the 6th dimension.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're out.